Australian tourism, regional Australia in trouble if backpacker tax does not pass in the Senate toda. Malcolm Turnbull has targeted the rich white kids from Europe in his campaign to tax overseas students whose Australian paychecks are ripe for the picking. PM Malcolm Turnbull says the government remains committed to a 15% backpacker tax. Today is a critical day in the Senate, not only for Mr Turnbull, but for tens of thousands of young overseas students who are fighting to stay in the country. More importantly, it's a huge day for our regional communities and Australian businesses who rely on these travelers to lend a much-needed hand during the seasonal period. Today is the final sitting of Parliament, so time is running out for a decision to be made on what percentage Australia will tax these travelers. If a decision is not made today, these people will be taxed 32.5% beginning from January, sending most of them home or further abroad to Canada, where the rate is much lower. The problem with losing these travelers has massive impacts on the tourism and regional industry. The backpacker tax is incredibly important, the National Farmers Federation President Fiona Simpson told news.com.au. It guarantees seasonal labor at a time when farmers need it the most. Farmers pick fruit, vegetables, and cotton seasonally, and the Australian workforce is not keen to take on those roles, so we have for some years depended on the backpacker workforce, which has come in at the busy times. These people live in the regional communities, spent what they earned in regional communities, and traveled the country spending their money on Australian tourism. We remain a favoured option for backpackers by putting more money in their pocket here than in Canada and other destinations. All seemed relatively calm yesterday when the government thought they had struck a deal with senators to lower the tax rate to 15%, but in a surprise twist, crossbenchers Darren Hinch and Rod Colton sided with the Labour Party to back an even lower rate at 10.5%. But both Mr Turnbull and Treasurer Scott Morrison have dug in their heels at 15%. Bill Shorten thinks rich kids from Europe should pay less tax than Pacific Islanders working here to send money back to their villages, Mr Turnbull said today. They say a backpacker from Europe, a rich kid on holidays here from Germany or Norway, backpacking around, he or she should pay less than Pacific Islanders who come here to pick fruit during the season and is sending that money back to his village, some of the poorest countries in the world. Mr Turnbull was referring to the seasonal worker program, where Pacific Islanders from Fiji, for example, come to Australia to work on the same farms. They are taxed a rate of 15%. The problem is, Mr Turnbull does not have enough votes in the Senate and is relying on Senators Jackie Lambie, Mr Hinch and Mr Colton to vote in his favour. Yet in a press statement, the trio called on the government to compromise and agree to a guaranteed, internationally competitive backpacker tax rate at 13%. Ms. Lambie was not available for comment when contacted by news.com.au. The PM called me in to see if there is any negotiation we can do, any leeway, and I just told him, no, 13% is the top, that's it, Mr. Hinch said in a statement earlier today. I put up another proposition last night to the Treasurer which we thought was a good one, and that was just postpone it until, say, August and then come in with your guns blazing and try it again, because that way this season's crop all gets picked and we all go home and have a good Christmas. First of all, last night the Treasurer told me that was not on, and I said we will just keep putting things on the table, and he said that's not on. I asked why. Because with the concurrence of the farmers, they would happily postpone it for some months for the election, so there is no reason why we couldn't postpone it again. But Ms. Simpson says the tax rate is about fairness. It's not fair for backpackers to pay one rate, Pacific Islanders pay another rate and Aussies pay another rate. For us it's a critically important issue that we don't end up with 32.5%. Ms. Simpson said a 15 to 19% tax rate was internationally competitive, despite Ms. Lambie claiming 13% was an internationally competitive price. Labour defended its plan for the 10.5% rate. The combination of super tax and the tax rate means the effective tax rate for backpackers under Labour's compromise of 10.5% is higher than for the seasonal worker program, as these workers are not subject to the same superannuation clawback arrangements, Shadow Treasurer Chris Bowen said. Yet while politicians continued to argue, farmers' anxiety continues to grow, with the fear a stalemate will lead to the worst possible outcome. Too many crops and not enough hands to pick them. The domino effect will see regional businesses and communities suffer. What we really want is a resolution. We don't want to walk out of here with 32.5, Ms. Simpson. Labour's position is difficult to understand. They've come into this discussion quite late. They've only entered the discussion in the last 18 days, despite this issue being on the table for 18 months. Backpackers tend to be university students from overseas. They tend to be from Europe, specifically France, Germany, Switzerland and the UK, and they tend to be either undergraduates or partway through their degree. It's a completely different scheme to the seasonal worker scheme, where we get people from Fiji and undeveloped countries and work hard and save everything they make and send home, said Ms. Simpson. Backpackers spend everything they make here. Clock ticking to avoid number backpacker tax. PLS contacted Humani headline at Senator Colton and at Jack Wheelamby. Tell them 15% is competitive and fair. Pic.twitter.com OJVXSH3LXU. I voted to improve the number backpacker tax to ensure Australia is internationally competitive. Number Ospel number Politas. Pic.twitter.com BOEQHAD60N. I offered ScoMo 2 deals. A 13% tax, or, until August, take off table and let this season's crop be picked. He rejected the latter.